Good morning. Today we're joined by Sr Mary, who previous student, teacher and principal of Presentation College Windsor, who will join me for a conversation about her life of service, her life at the college and her continuing life here in the area of Windsor. We do welcome Sr Mary and thank her for her time. I wonder if you could tell us about the years that you spent at PCW as student, and then later on we'll address the time that you spent there as a staff member and then eventually principal.
Good. All right. Yeah. Well, look, first of all, I would like to correct, there's a misconception in some areas that we founded the primary school at East St Kilda. Well, now, we didn't found the primary school, we did found the secondary school, but we ensured the continuity of the primary school, because if you remember that when Victoria first began, the government was very happy for anybody who would do anything at all on education. They let them do it, it was a good thing to do. But then when we got up to the 1872 Act, which was free, compulsory, and that was quite all right, but the secular thing, well now the church schools, the Church of England and the Catholic schools, they were the most numerous. And the Catholic school at St Mary's wouldn't have been able to go on for very long after 1872, and that was where we came into the picture. So I'd just like to make sure everybody was sure of that.
Thank you. And so what was if you go right back to your time as a student, what's some of your fondest memories and the memories that you do have from that time?
Well, you see, when the school first came, women didn't go to the university in those days. They didn't go to the university until about 1888, I think it was. And it was more like a finishing school. You went to the convent school, you finished yourself off. So social behaviour and all that sort of thing was very, very important. Well now, then, of course, once we began to go to the university, well, academic success was important. Well, I came to the school in 1938 and there was still strong evidence of that other type of social education. For instance, we had a half hour every single week. In every single homeroom there would be a special elocutions teacher would come and give a half-hour lesson. And we did our vowel songs and ending our consonants, and all that was very, very important. Now, Mother Evangelist had just died when I came. I came in 1938. Now, Mother Evangelist McInerney, she had brought the school into its academic stage, and she had just died in 1933. So her name and influence was still very strong in the school. Now, she was very interesting because she came from a highly intellectual family. One boy was, he was in warden or something at the University of Melbourne. His picture used to be in Wilson Hall before it was burnt down. And she had another brother high up in the Jesuit order and another brother high up in the army. And they all had had a high-class university education. But she, being a girl, hadn't. But she had read her way through all their books. She just followed them wherever they went. And she was a highly self-educated woman. Well, if she didn't put the pressure on for academic success, and that began to come into the school, well then Mother Paul, who had carried on the school with the finishing school idea,
Yep.
Oh dear, she said, these exams will kill social life. And she was a little bit worried about it, but she gave Sister Evangelist her head, and she went ahead and pressed on with the academic work. Now, when I came in 1938, even then, going to the university wasn't all that much common for girls. You know, you didn't, like now they expect automatically almost that they'll go. Well, I don't want to go on and on like that, but you get the drift
Sure.
of what happened.
Okay. And I'm also wondering that after your time at the school, at what point in your life did a life of service become your calling and then lead on to, I guess, the life and the life of service that you led?
Oh yes, well no, I'm not given to spiritual experiences, I can assure you. But something that always stands out in my memory, there was something on at school and we'd stayed back late and I was sitting down near the gate, waiting to be picked up. And the full moon was up. And it was just at a point when the full moon was behind Windsor and it silhouetted the building, against the sky. And I was really taken with this. I've never forgotten the scene. And years since, whenever there's a full moon, I look over to see if I ever can actually recapture it. But this moment when it was fully silhouetted against the thing, and I thought, that's where I'm going to be. And that garden, of course, was lovely and all that sort of thing. So that was where I first thought. And also, I was very happy as a student, and I realised I had a chance that a lot of other children did. I only got it on scholarship too, by the way, because it was depression time when I was coming through. And I was anxious to give others, a similar opportunity. The only other thing I ever considered doing was law, but I'm very glad I did teaching.
And so that life of service and then into teaching,
yes,
and then led to you becoming principal. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about some of your achievements across those many years, and the great moments that you had.
Oh, I don't know whether I've had great moments as a principal. I can't think of great moments, but the main thing while I was principal was to keep your exam results up. And you did everything you possibly could for that. And another thing that inspired me too, when I was at school, of the subjects that I did, Sister Edwardine and Sister Aquinas were two marvellous teachers that stood out in my memory. Well, she had a wonderful Oxford accent. She was an English woman. And her voice used to zoom around the room, as she used to call it. And she was a wonderful teacher. And Sister Aquinas was also a great teacher. And Sister Aquinas taught a strange combination of subjects. She was an excellent teacher of history and maths. Now, you don't often see a teacher doing both of those.
No,
it's usually maths and science and history and literature. And they had a lot to do with inspiring me to try to be like them.
And I wonder, what were the main values that you brought to being a teacher and then later a principal, and the way that you sort of imparted that on the students that you spent all those years with?
Yes. Well, now, I'm not too sure whether I can answer that question adequately. I think I've always had a fairly good ease of communication. And, that's interesting too. My starting as a teacher. Now, of course, at Windsor, they went out to the primary schools, and the first class I ever had on my own was at Armidale. I was living at Windsor and going to Armidale. And in the first class I ever had was Bobby Maguire. You've probably heard of Bobby Maguire.
Sure.
Well, anyway, the state inspector came on his occasional visit, and he took me aside afterwards and he said, "Oh, you've got a future as a teacher." He said, "The way you can engage that class." Well, I thought, oh dear, I'm marvellous, I can engage that class. But later on, I realised it was Bobby Maguire who engaged that class. And I had lots of classes later, that weren't anything like him. But he could make anything alive,
But you were there.
But I was there. and we probably hit it off with each other. He was only, I can see him still in short pants.
I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the Presentation Sisters and their role in history, but also in the world today, locally, globally.
Well, I'll start with the world today. Now, obviously, here we are declining. And that doesn't worry me at all because we were needed at a certain time. We're not needed now. Now, when we look across the Presentation Sisters across the world, we find that in Africa and India, they are growing. They're up to the stage that we were up to, many years ago. So I think across the world, Presentation Sisters are all at different stages. Nano Nagle founded them, but they've all gone different ways according to the cultures in which they have worked.
That's an incredible outlook that you share with us there, because, as I said before, your life of service, and to see it so clearly that there might be decline, but there's reason for that, but there's still place in the world for
them, yes.
for them,
and also to realise that you've done your part at the time you were wanted. Now, the Christian Brothers have a similar story. Edmund Rice, he was very much along the lines of Nano Nagle. I think Nano Nagle started, but then Edmund Rice picked it up for the boys. And both of those founders have done enormous good in the world, I think.
All right, I'm near the end, but I'm really interested to know your views on PCW becoming a co-educational school now as St Mary's, and your views on that, and just how you've seen it from...
Oh, yes. Well, I think we're up to the stage, actually, that it's been co-education in many ways for years, because we did, right from the start, we did lots of things. I tell you who, Brother McCarthy, are you too young to remember Brother McCarthy?
I am, but that's okay.
Well, Brother McCarthy was, his ambition was to make gentlemen out of the Christian Brother boys over the road. And he came over here one day and he suggested we have dancing classes. We always had dancing in that. Dancing was important over here. And he wanted the boys to come over and they'd have the dancing classes together. Well, we started that. I think it went on for over 40 years.
Okay.
And and very often on lectures and things like that we combine. So I think it was really merely a formalising of all of that. I think this is the next stage in its development, and look, nobody could be more anxious than myself that it eventually be a success. It won't suddenly be one, but eventually.
Well, Sister Mary, I think you've given us a really good insight to your time and your connection to the college, and even some inspiration for our future, and a future that we hope that you're certainly a part of. So thank you for spending time with us this morning.
Right, well, very pleasant to do it.
Thanks, Sister Mary.
Well, thank you too.